Okay, very quick job here. Anywhere you missed, feel this is a little rough here, where the epoxy from the side got up over the top edge. Anywhere you missed wiping that off with a paper towel, just sand it lightly so you don't have any bumps there that'll hold the planks apart. So that's real quick. A little hard around the hull sections, but still only takes a minute. Just make sure it's smooth so your planks won't be held apart. Your next plank won't be held apart. There. And again, this is the 100 grit, the purple sandpaper, which I like, by 3M. Okay, so work on our way around there, around the boat that way, and then we'll be ready for some more planking, which is exciting. And the boat's starting to stiffen up and take some shape. So very nice, looking great, beautiful. Now as we work our way up the sides, until we get over the turn in the bilge here, we're going to find there's some twist, because at the back of the boat we're getting into planks that are pretty flat now, and they're horizontal back there, and up in here they're still fairly vertical. So to take care of that twist, we're going to have to use pins to take the twist out of the plank here. The double-sided tape won't be able to hold it. So hold your pin initially about 1/4 of an inch from the end. Grip it very tightly in the needle nose pliers and force it through the plank. Then grab it again, another about 1/8 of an inch up, force it in again, and maybe one more time, 1/8 of an inch up, because there's a fair amount of twist in these. So you want to be able to hold them so they're at not quite vertical here, but at just a very slight angle here, and at the back they're going to be, at the very back, at the tail, they're almost horizontal. Okay, so that's our pinning system, in addition to the double-sided tape, and that will hold these planks as we go up into the turn. We'll also need pins at some places up in the bow as well, and we'll also be using more tape. We are getting into parts of the boat where we don't necessarily have to be right against the hull station on every plank. What we want is the planks to be lined up nicely and have a fair shape. And each boat will build a little bit differently. If you want to pin each plank in towards tight to the hull sections, you could, but we can also just use masking tape to hold the planks aligned with each other and use the hull sections as an approximation of the shape that we're aiming for. Okay, so now we'll work forwards and run that next plank up to the front and get that done. Alright, here's the next plank right here. Let's go ahead and see how this one's going to lay in here. Okay, so at this back end we'll butt them together here and peel back our orange backing here. Get them butted together tight. Press that on, and then the next section, press this on. This should be enough to hold it so we can measure at the bow and mark it. And we'll move up to the front. Okay. That looks about there, about there.
Here we're going to have to use a pin to hold that into the right twist. So let's do that pinning job so you can see how that goes. Big thing with the pinning is make sure the pins go in far enough to hold. You have to grab it several times, just 1/8 of an inch farther up. If you try to grab it too far back to start with, you'll bend the pin, and then you just grab another pin. And let's pin it on the other side too there. That same station where we have that twist. We're getting out. I think maybe you can see that fairly well, hopefully. Come in a little closer. You can see that plank is not touching the hull section. We'll bring this one in here, give it some twist. Now on this side, these planks are tending to have moved away from the hull section just a little bit. And that's okay, we'll leave them. We'll just make the hull fair on this side. We don't need to be right on the hull section always. We'll kind of gradually work them back in towards the hull section. Okay. It looks nicely lined up with the other planks now. And we can add some blue masking tape, and in fact that's what we will do as we get up farther and have more planks. Maybe 4 or 5 planks, we'll tape them so all those planks are flush on the outside and moving in the right direction towards coming back to meet at the tip there. But if your planks pull away from the hull sections just a little bit, that really isn't a problem. Just keep your shape fair. The planks are so straight themselves that they want to keep a fair shape. So, so overall your boat will turn out very fair and graceful. So not to worry if there's a little bit of clearance between the planking and some of the hull sections.
use the whole sections as a guide rather than an absolute mandate for where the planks have to be touching. Okay, looks good. Here, let's keep going with our super glue. Take care of this twist here. We have both planks fitted, but we've got to get them twisted into place here. This one first and then that one. Okay. So let's get that one out of the way. Get this one in place. And just a little dab of super glue back here. A couple of places along here to hold that twist in. Okay, that should do it. And that's it, good. And then the same for this one here. This should fit right in nicely. And there we go. Ready for our next planks. Now you can use super glue anywhere you think it'll be useful. This 2P10 is waterproof and permanent, bonds great with the wood, and is compatible with the epoxy. So anywhere you think that will be helpful, go ahead and use a touch of that. Okay, next plank. The herringbone always starts on the left-hand side here. And we'll do a bit of an undercut on this cut. Okay. And that just a little bit more. You see, we're doing quite a bit of undercut on that. And that looks nice. Now as we get up over the turn of the bilge, farther forwards, these back planks are going to be happier laying in there flat. It looks like we'll use a little super glue on this one again, this one and the one on the other side, but we're starting to get pretty far up the turn of the bilge further forward, so that's going to make everything fit back here much more easily. Just temporarily just hold this in place here while we get the other side fitted. Now we should have a pretty good idea of the angle on this side, so let's just go ahead and cut it and then check it. A little bit more angle. Let's try that. That looks pretty nice. Good. Okay, a little more super glue on this one to take care of the twist. away for a minute. I'm going to go forwards a little bit with a little bit more super glue up in here. This is going to pull apart a little bit in here. Now we have a little separation here. We'll try masking tape on this, or maybe the double-sided tape will hold that in. We have 3 options: masking tape, super glue, and pins. In that order, I think. Masking tape is easiest, super glue is quite simple as well, and then pins are a little bit more time consuming, but they work fine too. And so 3 ways of dealing with holding the planks in place when the double-sided tape isn't quite enough to hold them tight. Okay, and then up here you see we have a joint here that we're ready to take care of. That's pulling apart just a little bit, and we'll get the tape on there. Now that we have a plank above as well as the planks below, it's easy to tape this together tight. I don't like to tape these butt joints until there's a plank, one plank above them to hold to, because that makes it such a nice tight joint. If you're just taping it below, it's never going to be quite as tight. Okay, so that's so easy. And we'll get the one on the other side at the same time. You see from the inside how that's pulling apart. Going a little closer there. Actually a little hard to see. It's right above that other butt joint, but it's enough planks apart that it's not a problem at all. So it's right in here. And this time we'll make sure we're pulling it down tight as well. Make sure there's no gap below that butt joint. And rubbing it on with the fingernail to make sure it sticks there tight. Okay, got it. Good. Well, now we've got two planks above our epoxy work, looking good, and exciting. We're getting up over the turn of the bilge here, and then we'll be home free, because that last part is just the plywood pieces, the marine plywood. So we're moving along here, a few more strips. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Okay, I'm not wild about using this short of a plank up here at the bow. but I wanted to show you how we'll take care of it. Here's the joint right here, and so you can see we're just barely over 2 sections from the bow, so not very far back from the bow at all. So the plank, since it's not running very far, it just wants to be straight. It doesn't have a natural curve from being attached to a whole series of hull sections. So in this case, we're really going to have to use the super glue to give the plank its position, because otherwise it's just not going to work. And we are pulling away a little bit from these front stations, hull stations, but that's okay. We still have a very fine, fair shape up here, and that's what we're really concerned about. Okay, so these last 2 planks, we're going to tack them both in place with the super glue. Make sure they're just where you want them, because once they're glued, you're not moving them. And we'll just do a short run at a time, a little few inches at a time. Probably out, but back where you can't see now, there. Okay. A little bit more up here. And this makes it easy. It'd be hard to hold long enough for the epoxy to set up. With the super glue and the spritzer, it's very simple. We do already have this plank fitted at the bow, so we're not worried about that part. That's already the right shape. Okay, good. That one looks pretty good. We'll do the same on the other side, and we'll have it. Okay, time for a little selfie. I don't know if you can hear that, but I wanted to show you the protective gear. When I'm on film, I am sometimes working without the face mask because it's hard to hear. But the face mask is an organic vapor filter mask. Let's get that off so we can hear. Okay, so that's an organic vapor filter mask, and it's a real good precaution for both the super glue and the epoxy. See if I can get it off here. Okay, so good plan. Also in the background, don't know if you can see that far back, but there are a couple of fans running, and that's moving. I can feel the air moving past, and that makes it real pleasant working with these different adhesives and the CA, which is also called super glue, and the epoxy. And now I want to show you at the bow how we've got those bow planks behaving themselves. On this side, we used CA. Each of the dark spots is CA here and here, 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 here. So you can see quite a few spots of CA, doing just 2 or 3 at a time, and they come way back here, right in front of section 6. That looks like 9, but it's upside down. Number 6. So, and then behind that, it lays flat. 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a little pulling away, a bit of a gap here at 10. So I think I'll add a little super glue right there also. And then it's not until we get back to 11 and 12 that we really are starting to use quite a bit of CA into this area again, right at the, as it tucks into the tail there. So we'll add just a drop right here at station number 10, because there's a gap. I don't know if you can see it as well as I can, but we'll put just a drop in there to seal that up. We could do this with tape just as well, but got the CA right here, so that's an easy fix there. See how easily that goes together, and this looks good now. Okay, so just that one little spot there. And it wants a little bit underneath as well. There we go. So you can see anywhere you think you need a little bit of help, to hold things in place, just hit it with the CA and or tape, and reserve the pins for just where you have the worst twist. So far we've only used about 10 pins, or even less, maybe 8 or 9 pins. Okay, and there we go. That's good. Looking nice. Okay, so that's bringing us up pretty close to the turn of the builds there. And it looks very smooth and very clean. Okay, I wanted to give you a close-up so you can see a little bit more how the CA is going on. Down below you can see we used more tape. Those planks lay in there a little, there's not as much twist to them, so they lay in there a little bit easier. These upper planks are easy to put in, but I think the CA is slightly superior to the tape when you've got more twist. And here they are at the back where they are meeting, and you can see right where the planks meet, we've added quite a bit of CA along there, holding the ends of the planks in place. And any place you have a gap between the planks, that's an important place to use the CA. Here looks like we had a series, all these planks wanted to pull in a little bit and leave gaps between each one, so we used a series of CA. If you just put CA between the last two, it might create a gap down here as those planks pull out on the pull in on the lower planks. So here we have a series of CA dots. Those weren't done as each plank was put in place. Those were done after all those planks were there, and we said, whoa, there's a little bit of a gap between each plank. Let's get that gap out with a little CA. And you may find that each side is a little bit different, but if one side needs CA in an area, there's a good chance the other side may too. And you can see that's the case here in this same area over on the other side. There were gaps here. Here we didn't line up the CA as we did on the other side. The gaps seem to be a little staggered, so the CA is staggered too. Moving forwards, here we had some gaps right in that area, and you can see the whole line of CA there. Just a little dot will do it. You don't need much. And those were all done simultaneously. All these planks were in place, and then we came back and said, well, little gaps along here. Let's start down here. And this, you can see these two planks are glued together. These two are glued together down to the epoxy, last plank where we had the epoxy. Little CA here, and then all the way up. So actually each plank is glued so it won't pull apart and leave a gap. Otherwise we'd have gaps between each of these planks. And this is right halfway between the section frames, okay? That's often the area where you want to be especially alert to gaps. You're more likely to have gaps in between the section frames. Okay, then you can see in here, not so much CA. There are a couple of dots here, a couple here, one here. As we're moving forwards, now we're up to hull section 8 and 7. So these middle planks have less twist, although here we got a little twist on the end pieces. So we use a little CA to hold those in place, right where the two planks meet there. Another point that I wanted to make is that you can see there's a joint here, but they're no lined up. The joints aren't lined up until, so a joint here, then there's a right all the way back, and in here, so we have a whole section between the joints. And then where's the next joint? We got a few more joints. Here's a joint way up here. Next one up, next line of planking up higher. This is up between section 4 and 3. And then there's probably a joint under this tape. Sometimes taping over the joints is real nice. Here's a joint over here, right under this tape. So then here's the whole line of CA, where those planks probably wanted to pull apart and leave little gaps. Okay, a little CA right around this joint. And then up towards the bow, there are a few places where you want to add CA. Here's a whole line of CA. These planks weren't so much leaving a gap, they just didn't want to stay perfectly lined up. One plank would be in a little bit farther, another plank out a little bit farther, and so the CA isn't used so much here to close a gap, it's used more to make the surface of all the planks flush with each other, the surfaces flush. So that's another use of CA. And again, on the other side, in the same area, we had the same thing happening. Okay, you can see at the bow sections, as we wrap the planks in, there's more need. You need to use a little more CA. See, there's quite a bit of CA along there. Just all those dots, the darker dots are where the CA is. So don't feel worried about using more CA. It'll blend in perfectly with the epoxy. And the CA is really just being used to hold the planking in the proper place until the epoxy gets on there. So it's great, and just a little dot and then spritz it with the activator and it's all set, ready to go. So looking really good, and we're going to get this plywood, the plywood pieces. Oh, one last thing I wanted to show you. It's really important that you get this right. The plywood's not going to want to come down over the curve here. The plywood wants to stay flat. Plywood doesn't take compound curves, not partial to compound curves at all. So your planking wants to come up to the point where that is almost a flat surface along there. There's a little bit of curve down right here. Let's see if you can see that. I'm going to actually pull this covering tape back a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So there's a teensy bit of curve. It's almost flat though. And that's the key, because the plywood won't want to come down, wrap down over the side. You'll be fighting the plywood if you're trying to bend this edge down. So your planking should come up high enough that you've got a pretty straight surface here. Okay, and we can give you some measurements there. Let's count the planks. The planks are fairly uniform in size. So let's count the planks. The first planks up, the parts we epoxied were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That's the first group of planks. I think we did those actually in 2 groups, but we epoxied that all together. So that was 17. And then beyond that, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 17 and 8, 25 planks, okay? Coming up the side before we're ready, before we've reached the flat sections where we're ready to use the plywood. Another way to tell how close you're getting is to hold the plywood up there and see. As soon as the plywood overlaps that top plank, that should be, as soon as that plywood piece overlaps the top plank, you should be good. If the top plank doesn't quite meet the plywood, when the plywood is along the center line, lined up along the center line, if the planking doesn't meet the plywood, you probably need to add one more plank, okay? Or several more planks, whichever. Okay, I think that's pretty much catching you up to date with everything we've done so far. And probably the biggest thing at this point is don't just spend all your time admiring what a beautiful job you've done and how beautiful the boat looks. Keep working on it. Keep going. That's my problem. I just like to look at it. I step back and look at it from all these different angles. Oh boy, is that pretty. And isn't that a lovely shape? So keep moving ahead. Don't just spend too much time admiring how great you're doing, because it is beautiful. Okay, a lot of fun, and we'll see you soon. Okay, good job. Okay, just a real quick note here. One aspect of all this you've probably noticed is these little bumps along the edge of the plywood where it's been cut out with our computer-controlled router system. Before you do anything else on each piece, it's good to sand or plane these off, and they come off very quickly. Those bumps are just left from where we are holding the pieces into the big sheet of plywood when we cut it out, so the pieces don't get out of position and have the router cut into the piece itself. So those come off, in just a moment of sanding or planing. And but if you don't take those off, it'll be hard to fit your pieces. Okay, wow, we are doing great. Another few hours of planking, and now we're all the way up to where the bottom of the boat is flat, and we're getting ready to fit our plywood on the bottom, and it's looking beautiful. This is the first part that we did with the epoxy, planked it and then put the epoxy on, and then these strips we've left without the epoxy so far. Later on there'll be epoxy, just like the first parts. For now, these strips are held together with super glue wherever they don't want to stick to the template, to the framework, the strong back. So the super glue is keeping the planks lined up and in place wherever they needed a little support. And that's been very easy and gone very smoothly. And now we're getting ready to fit the bottom pieces. And that's, we've had a lot of fun doing the stripping, but I'm not sure it's fun up to a point. And then it's fun to switch to the plywood bottom pieces, which go really fast and fill in these big areas, because that'd be a lot of strips to keep going with all the strips. So that's the beauty of this design. You get to combine two slightly different boat building techniques, and it makes the project go really quickly and easily, and makes it a lot of fun. So we're doing just great. Now, in fitting the plywood, your plywood pieces are cut so the center line should be about right. And it looks pretty straight, doesn't it, that center line down the middle of the boat. But it's actually got a curve towards the front of the boat. And that's already been cut for you in what should be almost exactly precisely the right curve to line up. So it's lying in a straight line right along the center line. And when you add the piece from the other side, the two pieces should meet quite nicely. Any gaps we can fill with epoxy, so not to worry, but they should meet quite well. Okay, now in fitting this, the plywood should be overlapping just very slightly the top plank here. And you can see how that plywood is sitting on top there, when the plywood inner edge is exactly on the center line of the boat. So we'll want to shape that plywood to fit so it's just a perfect fit right inside that plank. And the starting point is to use a pencil to mark where we're going to cut that plywood back to. So first get your plywood clamped down onto the mold. Be very careful, it's a little tricky because you still have this glossy release tape on top of your sticky tape. And that glossy release tape is really quite slippery. So you have to get your clamps set just right. You have to angle your clamps so the clamp is perpendicular to the surface of the wood. That means the bottom is not straight up and down. The clamp is not straight up and down. The bottom is pulled back a little bit. So get your clamps holding the plywood in place, and then you're ready to mark it. And the way we mark it is just underneath. Oh, one point here, if you haven't got your strips up far enough that the plywood is just barely overlapping the strips, then you need to add another strip. So your plywood should be overlapping the strips or fit right up against them, but if it's pretty hard, since every planking job will be slightly different, it's pretty hard to anticipate that that plywood will fit in right inside that last plank perfectly all the way along. That's why we overlap it very slightly, so then you can fit it really precisely to exactly the way you've planked the boat so far. So we're going to take a pencil, use a sharp pencil, and then you'll reach underneath, feel where that inner plank edge is, and draw a pencil line right along, keeping your pencil exactly upright, right along that inner plank, so you're marking the bottom of your plywood. Do that between each section, all the way forwards, and then you're going to remove your plywood and start to fit it. So we'll take the clamp off. Take this clamp off and take a look. And here's our pencil line, right along here. And that's where we should come back to. But we're going to do this gradually. Rather than take it all the way back to the pencil line and assume that it's going to be a perfect fit right off, we're going to take it back a little bit, test it, take it back a little bit, test it. And as we get to the bow, think in terms of what angles we want. Mostly the planking is, this will lay pretty square up to the planking, but we could bevel this. Planking has a bit of an angle here. We could undercut this a little bit as we shape it. So it'll be beveled just a little bit wider on top, a slight amount narrower on the bottom, just to undercut just a little bit as we bevel, as we cut back the edge. The nicer the fit, the better, but again, the epoxy will fill whatever gaps you have, so not to worry about it. And if you're painting this part, you can't ever see it. Doesn't make any difference at all, not even visually. Okay, so we're going to plane it back or sand it back to this edge. Several ways of doing it. If you have a power sander, like a stand-up belt sander, that's a good way to do it. Take it back a little bit, test it, check it, take it back a little bit more, keep checking it. That's how you get a perfect fit. Nobody can do perfect work without repeated checking and putting it in place, checking how much more you need to take off. See if your pencil line, try to get a sense of whether your pencil line is really accurate, really right where you want it, or if or if something may have shifted. Be careful when you're marking it with a pencil that neither of your clamps have let the piece skid sideways either way. So double check. Don't mark once, cut. Mark twice, cut once. Just make sure your marks are really right. If you mark over it twice and you have two separate lines that are in different places, erase them both and try it and start again. Get a real clean line that you know. Get a real clean line that you know that's going to be accurate. Okay, now, sanding or planing are both good. I don't think I would use a saw. That would seem like a difficult way to do it to me, and you'll have a sort of a messier saw cut instead of a real smooth planed or sanded finish. So my inclination would be to use a hand plane, a little block plane, or power sanding equipment, or you can do it with a hand sander, like a block sander. I'd probably, it's a little bit more wood than I would like to start into removing by hand sanding, but it doesn't take that long. I would probably start with a 60 grit on your sanding block and end up with about 100 grit as you get really close to the line. So you get a smoother cut at the end. But the 60 grit will remove the material much faster than the 100 grit. So few options there, all of them pretty good. And the big reminder is keep checking it, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's kind of fun to test your skill and see how perfect you can get it. It's real pleasing when it looks really good. Okay, so this is the first panel, and then we'll do the panel that's behind that, again on the same side, and then we'll fit the panels on the other side and be working to make the panels meet as well as possible down the middle. One thing I do want to point out is where the panels are meeting. This one goes like this. Where the panels are meeting, at the front, they're meeting at quite an angle. Let's turn this around so you can see it better. They're going to be meeting, as we get back, they're meeting at this lower and lower slope, lower angle. But at the bow, they're meeting at quite an angle. So if we bevel the edge of the plywood at the bow at a fairly severe angle, that means the two pieces will meet nicely. If we leave those, each piece square at the bow, they're not going to meet quite as nicely. Again, not a problem because the epoxy can easily fill that. And the epoxy fill is just as strong as the wood, so it's no sacrifice in terms of strength or durability or longevity or anything. But might as well bevel it a little bit. It's kind of pleasing. This is your time to, get into, the skills of woodworking and see what you can do. And that's kind of the fun part. But don't obsess over it, because the epoxy will take care of anything that you don't do perfectly, and nobody will know but yourself, and you'll forget about it in a month after you start paddling the boat. You won't even remember the things that were like, oh my gosh, I wonder if that's going to be okay. So don't worry about it, just have fun. Okay, we're going to get this piece planed down. Let me show you a bit about the planing. I have a block plane here. This one's a real nice plane, but you don't need anything fancy. This actually this plane, let me bring it up so you can see it up close. This plane, you can actually set the gap here by loosening this and sliding that front piece. And at the back, this lever angles the blade one way or the other. I've got it set so it's straight, and I'll just hold the plane at an angle if I want an angled cut. And this turns it and pushes the blade out farther or pulls it back. The one thing that is important here is that the blade be really quite sharp. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing a lot of extra work and not get as good a finish. So make sure your blade, it should feel like, whoa. You don't want to run your finger along it. You'll slice, if it's not sharp enough to slice your finger and draw blood, if you run your finger along it sideways, you've got a pretty dull plane. So you can test it this way, but don't test it this way, okay? So a nice block plane, if you don't have one and you end up getting one for this project, you'll find it's one of the most useful tools you've got, and really a fun tool to have. But sandpaper will do it just as well. It might take a little longer with sandpaper. Okay, so here at the back, let's plane this down a little bit. And we'll be approaching our pencil line, but we won't go all the way to it. And we want a little bit of a bevel on it, so rather than holding the plane, hope you can see this. I'm going to move over here because I think, and let's turn the camera so I know we have you in where you can see. So rather than holding the plane blade square like this, we're going to hold the plane body at a slight angle and create a slight undercut so it'll match the angle of the planking. And just long, smooth strokes. It takes the wood off quite quickly, so keep checking your pencil lines. Look underneath. Oh, we're getting closer. Okay? And that's about all there is to this step. And then we'll just, as soon as we get close to the pencil line, we'll hold it up to the boat and check it. And then we'll do a little bit more and check it again, a little bit more and check it again, until we have a fit that we're real happy with. If you take off too much, of course, if you keep like fiddling with it and saying, oh, that's not quite a perfect fit, I'll take off a little bit more. Eventually, as you take off more and more, you're going to have a big gap in the center where the two panels from one side to the other side don't meet each other. So don't get obsessed with it being perfect, because you might actually start causing yourself a little bit more of a gap in the middle than the gap that you might have had along the side. So get it good enough and have fun shaping it, and whatever you don't feel is perfect, the epoxy will take care of. Okay, so I'm going to work on this and get this plank fitted perfectly. so far we just have about 3 evenings into building this boat. And it's been a lot of fun and gone really quickly. So I think you'll have a blast with it, and the thing is going to be super fast and fun to paddle. So let's carry on, and I'll be back with you shortly after I got this piece fitted in there and looking good. Okay, so we're getting closer on the planing, and just a couple of points I wanted to make. With the block plane, if you're not familiar with using them, one of the basic rules of planes is you never put it down flat on any surface, even clean wooden surface. You always set a block plane down on its side. That's to keep the blade from getting dull. Okay, the other thing is when you're planing down to your line or sanding down to your line, makes a lot of sense to turn your piece over so you can see your line as you work. So most of your planing or sanding will be done. Make sure you can see your line as you do your work. And it should go great. Just a little fitting and you'll be there. Okay, say we're getting very close. It's looking really nice. In fact, that is pretty good. I might take off just a teensy bit more right in here because it's wanting to still hit the edge of that plank and not fit flat down. But it's looking really good. Say, that was a good question. Why haven't we epoxied all the way up here? We wanted to get the epoxy on here to stabilize the whole thing, stiffen up the whole structure so we wouldn't get any twist or anything if we kicked the strong back. We wanted that to get, all those planks to be locked in. Why haven't we done the same thing on those last 8 planks here? Well, there is actually a reason. If you'd done that, that would be okay. If you put epoxy on this, you'd be okay. But it's a little bit easier not having epoxied this yet because there's a little bit more play in those top planks. So if they can either push out a little bit or push in a little bit. So we want to fit the plywood almost perfectly to the planks, but with a little bit of play in those planks still, they're not locked in yet with the epoxy, we can push them in just a little bit to butt right up against that plywood really nicely. You'll find up in here, that might be what you're doing, pushing them in just a little bit to pull in right against the plywood up at the front of the boat. So that's why I think it's a little bit easier not to epoxy these planks yet. Now, here I'm just noticing these planks here, this plank and this plank, are not quite flush on the surface. We're going to add a little dot of CA just there, right there, to pull that plank in just a little bit. Maybe one here, one here. So all these planks are going to be flush. Anytime before you put the epoxy on, you can add a dot of CA anywhere you think it'll smooth the surface a little bit. Probably be okay without it, but it sure will make a lot less sanding to get a smooth surface if you get all these plank edges lined up nicely, okay? So keep watching, and there's no problem with going back and adding CA to flush things up a little bit anywhere you notice at any point that it's not a perfectly flush surface between 2 planks, one plank sitting inside the other or outside the other. Okay, but looking great. Well, pretty soon we'll be ready to pull off our tape and get these panels on. But we're going to shape the other panel first before we get this one locked in. Okay, and a little bit more right off back here. Okay, now up at the bow here, we've got a fair amount of twist to pull this piece in here, the plywood piece. So we're going to use the standard stitch and glue technique here, which is a little piece of wire to hold the piece in place. First right where this first hull section, make sure you've got it lined up just right at the bow. Don't have it too far forwards or else this piece of plywood will push the other piece of plywood to the side too far. So get lined up just where you want it, and then right where this first hull section lies, put a little dot with a pencil on each side of that whole section up about 3/8 of an inch, right there and right here. A little dot with a pencil, and then take a 1/16 inch bit and just run it right through that. pencil hole, pencil mark on each side. Okay, and then on the frame, on this hull section, you can look right through your pencil holes there and get your pencil right lined up with the pencil hole. Make a little mark on the frame, about 3/8 of an inch or so into the frame, or even a little bit more. Doesn't really matter if it's more. 1/2 an inch. I'd go for 1/2 an inch in. And my pencil mark was a little bit deeper than that, but I will just put my drill hole up from the pencil mark a little bit, but straight out towards the edge. So here we are. I don't know if you can see that pencil mark probably, but anyway, I'm just right in here. I don't mind if I have to drill multiple holes in the strong back to get it right. That's fine. Okay, there we go. And if that's not quite right, I'll just put another hole in. Let's see what we've got. I think that'll be pretty good though. See it in there? Yeah, that should do it. If when you put your wire through there, it's not exactly pulling it at the right angle, you can put another hole. But when we take the backing off the sticky tape and have the wire pulling it in against that sticky tape, it should hold it right in place. Okay, so that should lie in there right nicely. Okay, back in here, right in here, this area here, you can see that area. Yeah, once this is pulled in place there, this planking wants to stay out from the hull section. It's not being held in by the sticky tape there. But that's fine, because when we get everything lined up and the sticky tape off, we'll use a little CA there to pull that planking down to the plywood, so we'll have a perfect fit there. And it's looking good all the way back. If we can pan back a little bit there, it's looking really nice all the way back. That's going to pull right in and lay exactly flush with the planking. So great job on fitting that. We're going to be ready to move on to the next step pretty quickly here. Now we're up to the front where we have these two holes and quite a bit of twist in this piece now. We want to make sure that we're able to hold that down tight in place. So now we've got a piece of copper wire that we've run through this hole. We've run it through the hole that we drilled in the front form, and now the tricky part is to get back up to the hole on the inside. And then you have to move to the other side to do that, and then we'll twist the wires and tighten that up. Probably would have been able to make this stay in place in other ways, but actually I think pliers will be, well, so I'm going to use a pair of needle nose pliers to get this poked back through here. It's a little tricky to see, but should we get it? Okay, and then pull it tight and twist the wires like so, and now we have that nice and tight there. Okay, and the front part will be held in by masking tape. Now there's quite a bit of misalignment in here. We anticipated that. Let's see if you can see that. It's a little harder to see through the camera, but right in through here there's a lot of misalignment between this piece and these planks. We anticipated that, and it's not only here but at other places as well. That's why we haven't done epoxy all the way up, and we're going to be able to move those right into place and hold them in place with CA, and this is looking like it'll all work out perfectly. Okay, so on to the CA, and we can use a combination of CA and tape. It's a little hard to see through the camera where the misalignment is. It looks awfully good in the camera, but we've got almost 1/4 of an inch off gap there until we push this in. So, and here it's the planking out and the plywood in. Here at the front it's the plywood out and the planking in. So those are the areas we'll be taking care of with the CA. Now there's going to be a little bit more force on the CA to hold this all together than some places where the gaps are less dramatic. So we'll want to use enough points through here that the CA will be able to hold it successfully. Okay, so you can see we're doing a few more points than we have in the past. Okay, and we'll get the spritzer on it. Okay, now we have the front panel fit, and that's clamped in place with 2 clamps. Don't try to do it with 1 clamp, and it's just too difficult to hold it still. The removable orange backed backing on the aggressive double-sided tape is super slippery, and you have to get those clamps at just the right angle, or else that panel is going to slide all over the place, slide sideways. So check it at the bow. That's probably the most obvious mistake to make. Check it at the bow, make sure that it's not too far forwards or too far back, and then check it all along the sides, and keep working until your clamps are placed in just the right way, just the right angle to hold that panel securely in place. And then add your back panel here, and on the left hand side the back panel is completely fit, and the center line is exactly right and brings it right to the point. Here at the back we've done a nice fitting. Let's take a look at that. I'm actually going to move this one so we can see better. This one has not been fit yet. Can you see how that comes right into that tongue and groove there? Let's just take a closer look here. Not tongue and groove, but right into that herringbone pattern. There we go. Whoops. Okay, so you see right here where that last piece, where the plywood piece is fit right into those last 2 pieces, and that's looking really good. Okay, now what we're going to do is fit, and this is exciting, we're closing in the bottom, and we'll soon have a boat that's bottom half is complete. So now we'll be fitting the second half at the back here and marking it and getting ready to put it in place, plane it down and shape it and put it in place. You know, the second piece should line up exactly with the first piece right across this line here. So that gives you something to aim for. And you should find that the second piece, keep the first piece in place, you should find that the second piece overlaps the top plank, at least the top plank, maybe overlaps up in here, it overlaps the top plank on my construction, and here it overlaps, at the back it overlaps even into the second plank from the top. So we have plenty of material to work with. If you got to this stage and this piece was not overlapping the planks at all, you would want to add another plank. But in this case, we're in good shape. And now I'm going to reach inside the boat from the side and mark along the edge of the plank. I'll feel first with my finger right where the edge of that plank is, that inside plank, and then I'll draw a pencil line, keeping the pencil straight upright so my line is accurate. I don't want to angle my pencil at all. Okay, and make sure it's a clear mark. And then I'll move to the next section here and do the same. Again, feeling with my finger where that inner plank is, and then drawing the pencil right along that inner plank from one section to the next. Okay. And then one more section here. Actually, I'll do this section here. Okay, again reaching inside and drawing the pencil along that inside plank. And now the last little bit here. Few thoughts on this process. You want your pencil to be quite sharp. Sometimes if your pencil's too sharp, it'll grab into the wood, dig into the wood, and not slide along the wood surface as easily. But you do want it quite precise, okay? Now, the other thing is if you angle your pencil aggressively in the direction you're traveling, again, it will want to dig in. So you want to, if you angle it way back, you may have some inaccuracy there. So you want to have it almost vertical, almost straight up and down, but very slightly angled back as you drag it along the wood. The other thing is you want to make sure you're not prying the tip of the pencil away from the proper placement for the mark by angling it away from the last plank that's installed. And you want to make sure you're not angling it so the pencil pushes underneath that last plank and gives you a wrong mark. Okay, and here's our mark. Looks very clean and easy to follow. And now what we'll be doing is planing to that mark. One point that I didn't make earlier about planing, and this doesn't apply to sanding obviously. Sanding, you sand back and forth and well, there is something about the sanding that's important. You always want to sand along the edge. You don't want to sand across the edge, especially with an aggressive grit of sandpaper. If you sand across the edge, you'll have more chance of messing up the veneer, splitting it off or something. So you want to sand along the edge like that. But as I said before, sanding's fine, but planing will be a lot easier and faster. When you're planing, you want to plane so the plane blade is cutting out of the grain and not digging into the grain. If I plane towards myself, the plane is digging into the grain of the wood, and there's more chance it won't plane as easily, and there's more chance of splitting into the grain and splitting off some of that surface veneer, or making it, at least it will be a less smooth surface, even if it doesn't really split. So you want to plane, so the plane blade is sliding off of the grain of the wood, not digging into the grain of the wood. Okay, so we'll plane this down, and what's the angle we want on this? This last plank is pretty close, the edge of it's fairly close to vertical, especially back at the back. As we move forwards here, there's a bit of angle in this area, but as we get in the back, it's pretty vertical. So we'll try to match that angle somewhat as we plane it. So this back area is where I need to take off the most. So we'll start planing back here. You can see how fast a nice sharp block plane takes off the wood. And that's really a pleasure to be using a good tool that's in good condition and sharp. I'm not sure I'd be holding it exactly this way if it weren't for trying to keep it in front of the camera. but I am trying to keep it in your view, so that's okay. It's fine to do it this way. So my goal here is to make it so it'll be an even amount that I'm taking off all along. I'm trying to take off the wood where there was a larger amount of wood to remove, so that we will have an even amount to take down. And then I'll start moving in towards that line. Remember, with this line, the line is at least a pencil thickness farther into the wood than where we want to cut to. And if I had my pencil at the wrong angle, by just a little bit, the line may be even farther in than I think it is. So I'll want to be very careful as I approach the line to keep fitting the piece and making sure that I don't take off too much wood. The other thing that I want to keep in mind is, if I want a really tight fit, I should angle the inside of the piece a little bit. And as I angle that piece, it'll move over that side. It'll move over away from the planking. So these are a few things to keep in mind and keep fitting the piece. In fact, with that in mind, I'll probably run the plane along this edge at a bit of an angle now, so I don't forget that detail. Best to do things while you're thinking of them. Now at the back, these two pieces aren't at much angle, but there's still a little bit of angle. Okay, so we'll do a bit of angle at the back, right to the very back corner, but not a very sharp angle, because the boat flattens out, the bottom flattens out here towards the stern. Okay, let's check that angle there and see where we're at. And take a look at it. There's a gap from about here to here is a bit of a gap. It's not dramatic, but there's a teensy bit more space here. It's tight here, tight here. So I'm going to take off a little bit along here and a little bit from here back. I'll mark this one from there back and from about here back. And we'll see if we can reduce that gap in the middle a little bit. And then we'll keep working on fitting the outside. Okay, remember, a plane takes wood off quite quickly, so don't go too far. Okay, let's see how we're doing now. That looks very nice. Well, that looks pretty good. It's nice along here. I think now we just have to take off a little bit, no, not even, a little bit at the very back there. Okay, from there, that mark back, I don't know if you could see that, but right at the back, right from this mark back, we're a little tight and still a bit of a gap in here. So we'll take that off and then we'll start working on the edge. Okay. Just a little bit more. And I'll try to stay in the camera view. Okay, see what we've got now. And this is how you have to fit things if you really want it to be a good fit. You can't do it in one go. It's a matter of trying it, taking off a little bit. Now my gap ends here, so I want to come from there to the back with a little bit more wood removed. Just a little bit at a time. So that's from here. Fitting is always a process. You think, oh, I'll take off a little bit, you take off a little bit, oh, I'm not even getting close. You take off more, still not close, and then you decide to take off a lot, and you've got a problem, you took off too much. Okay, now I think my gap is pretty well closed all the way along, and of course epoxy would have filled in that gap, but it's fun to have a really good fit. So let's take a look. That's pretty tight all the way along there now. So I think we're happy with that. Okay, so we'll go back to planing the edge of the piece to fit it to the top plank, and then we'll have this piece in place, and then we'll move forwards to the large panel on this side. Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Anything you can do to make all of this easier is great. Here farther forwards, I've got a sanding block sitting on the piece here to hold it in place so it doesn't get up over that plank, so I know it's in the correct position. In the back here, you can see how this is popping up. That's slowing me down a little bit, so I'm going to use a little bit of tape right against the tip, right across the tip, to hold it in place. So as I fit the other piece repeatedly, I don't have to keep checking to make sure this piece is in place. That tape will come off probably at some point. Okay, so now that's all fit, and keep checking, make sure you don't have a problem with the fit of this piece relative to the back piece relative to the front piece up there. Make sure you check your bow again, make sure that's correct, and then let's get our final fitting on this piece here. This piece is getting pretty good, but we're finding that our pencil line is a little bit off in that this part's almost fit. I have it planed down to the same space from the pencil line all the way along, pretty close, but this end is almost fit in correctly now, whereas this end needs a little more taken off than the pointy end. So don't trust your pencil line absolutely, just keep fitting it and trust the fit more than your pencil line. So this looks almost just right here, and yet back here I'm half a plank width still to go. So keep fitting, keep checking, and that will be how you get, if you fit it 15 times during this process, that's fine. It's especially easy to fit the plank when you're working right beside the boat like this. That is the advantage of block plane, because you can be right beside the boat, plane a little bit, fit it, plane a little bit, fit it, and go back and forth. Whereas if you're using a stand-up belt sander, you probably have to walk over to where the machine is, and you still need to fit it just as often, but you're probably more inclined not to fit it quite as often. Here, right beside the workpiece, it's so obvious and simple to fit it. Okay, so we're getting down there. The temptation is to rush it, and the problem with that is it's a pretty good likelihood you'll take off too much someplace and have a gap. Not a problem, because the epoxy will fill the gap, so it's not really something to worry about. But as far as you're feeling that you did a very skillful, beautiful, craftsman-like job fitting it, it's nice to have it perfect. Okay, we're still moving in. We're pretty good up here, almost fits, not quite, and still need, looks like our pencil line may be fairly accurate back in here. So we keep checking it. So back in here, looks like we need a fair amount more off, all the way down to our pencil line. But up at the other end, up at the pointy end, we're getting very close. Okay, we'll get this fit and be back with you shortly. Okay, and there we've got it, tight as a slipper. Right at the very end, rather than pushing it down into place, we moved the piece forwards about ½ an inch and then slid it back into place. And it slid in perfectly, and that created some pressure against the planks on either side, So these planks were tightened up along here, and now the last thing, and along here, as we slid that wedge-shaped piece back, we tightened everything up. Now the last thing that we want to do is to even up these planks. A little bit of pressure on these planks now, squeeze, because they're being squeezed together by the wedge-shaped pieces. So we want to even them up just a little bit. And then what we'll do is put a little bit of CA on the between the plywood pieces and the top plank to hold this all stable. And then we won't have this part moving around as we work on the front plywood piece. Okay, so just stabilizing these pieces here, or just lining them up. This plywood piece is a little bit low there. I'll slide that up so it's level. There we go. And get these pieces. If your pieces are too staggered in and out, different levels, then when you go to sand it smooth, some of those pieces will get a little bit thin. They'll probably be okay still, but it's better to have them level so one plank isn't high and the next one low. Okay, that's looking really good. This is a little bit low right here, we'll get that. So checking it carefully everywhere is the key at this stage. We'll get a little tape on it too. And that'll help keep everything lined up while we do the CA. Okay, we're a little high right there. Let's get this plank up just a bit, lined up, a little bit low here. So individually adjusting the planks in and out as far as their level. You can do it by a combination of looking at it and a combination of feeling where there's a lump, where the planks are not flush. Okay, I think we're pretty good all along here. We're going to try some CA in that area. And right in here, there's a bit of a gap that we'll want to close by pushing the planking in just a bit. So let's see if we can get that tight there. Okay, and then the activator. And there we have it. That closed that gap perfectly. Okay, so a few more dots of CA. Hope you could see that last one. That last dot was right there. And do a little bit of CA right in here. And I think between the planks of plywood right there. And we'll stabilize this joint right up in here. Exactly lined up. Before you let the CA set up, get things lined up exactly the way you want them. And a few more CAs along this side here. And again up here, I think we can, there's a little pressure on the plywood to push on the, little pressure on the planking to push it up against, tight against the plywood. Okay, now we'll be moving forwards and fitting that front plywood section, and that piece will be fit in the same way as the piece we just fit. A little bit longer, so we have to count on it. It's taking a little bit more planing and all, but it should not really be any more difficult. First step on fitting this second long piece, we know at the bow how these two pieces come together at quite a steep angle. And so we can plane an undercut on the first part of this piece to get it ready before we even need to put it on the boat. So remember what steep angle that is up at the front, and just try to match that angle. You don't have to get quite as much angle in this piece as there actually is. It's okay to have a bit of a gap, but try to get a fairly significant angle there without changing the profile of the piece looking at straight on for a bow. So just undercutting that side. Make sure you're undercutting, that you have this piece the right way up, that you're not doing the wrong side of it. Think in terms of the boat. That's the back end and that's the front end. I've got it turned around the opposite of the way it will end up going. It'll end up going, whoops, like this here. And so that'll be playing that angle. There, and that's looking about the right angle actually. Just a few strokes will do it. Changing the angle is easy. You may as well bring it on back. Less angle as we get back towards the middle of the piece, in the middle of the boat, and even less angle towards the back of the piece. But some angle all the way along. Okay. That might do it. Okay, now we're ready for the initial fitting of this piece. And let's see where we're at and how close we are. Again, checking the first piece, making sure that we haven't slid too much, and it has actually slid in here, so let's get that back. Okay, there we go. And then I'll push in, good. Okay, now at this stage we've got a bit of a question, because these clamps will keep us from fitting this piece. So we're going to have to use tape and CA to get that piece in place. We're really ready at this point to remove if you're sure it's fit correctly and you're not going to have to try to pop it off again to change it, it looks like we're really ready at this point to remove the orange backing and have this piece stuck down to the templates. You may have noticed that we didn't do that at the back on those back pieces. I think that was an oversight. So when you're fitting those back pieces, when you know you have them right before you put the CA on, you may as well remove the orange tape. Not a problem. Those back pieces are pretty well secured in place, but we will have to deal with those tabs of orange tape that are sticking up now. If you look back there, you'll see those orange tape tabs sticking up to between the planking and the plywood. Those will have to come out. We'll have to get those out so they're not in the boat, but we should be able to do that. We don't have much CA on there, and we should be able to work those out. At the front, up in here, we'll probably pull that orange tape right off, the backing paper right off the orange tape up in here, and we'll see if we can do that in the middle section as well. At the back, we may just try to get that orange tape, that orange backing, so it's not coming up between the pieces. We'll see what works best. Okay, but would have been good to take that off before using the CA. Okay, this orange tape sticking up. We just got the most difficult one, the farthest one back. Got the tape out pretty easily. It turns out that we can just reach underneath, slide sideways a bit, reach underneath, and remove it from underneath the plywood. Okay, and there it is, out of the way. And then we can push these pieces into place right tight against the template, strong back template. May as well push them on fairly firmly because they're where we want them now. and that'll help stabilize everything. Okay, and one more here. This one comes out easily. And we've got it. Uh-oh. Almost got it. Okay, there we go. Now we got this fit in. Okay, nice work. Get this. Okay, remember, go back and level out your planking. You don't want to do this one. You don't want to be leveling the planking when you have wet epoxy on there. It wouldn't be so much fun. Okay, and once we get this all level, let's add some CA. Keep everything in place. Push this down on the form tight. Get this aligned here. Anytime you spend aligning planking or edges is going to be well spent time. It's very easy to do. It's just a matter of seeing where you need to do it and doing it. Okay. Lock all this in place. We'll get the same on the other side as well. These planks are all staying in place nicely, but I'm still adding a little CA just to make sure we don't have anything dislodge. Okay. Nice. Nice job. Okay. Now we'll work on that front piece. We'll be taking the orange tape off and then using a little CA along the sides. Make sure we have everything positioned exactly right on this piece before we start fitting the complementary piece on the other side. Okay. Now I don't want to take the tape off farther than the midpoint of the boat because we want that orange backing still in place on the second side. Okay, that looks pretty good. You have to hold it and press it down a little bit to make sure it's holding. And we'll go on forwards like that with the tape being pulled off halfway up. Now in here there's a little bit more curve still to the bottom, so it's going to take a little bit of coaxing to keep these edges down. Make sure you're not too far out to the side where you're overlapping this planking, because that planking will lift up a little bit and the plywood will press down. So you have those two things. That's why we haven't got epoxy on this part up here yet, because we want to be able to make that planking meet just right with the edge of the plywood. Okay, and moving forwards, check further forward to make sure you're lined up ahead of where you're working. That's probably the biggest thing to try to remember. Don't just get so focused on right where you're working that you're not aware of what's happening on either side of you, because you want the whole piece to be lined up correctly. Okay, it's looking good. Now we can take this clamp off because everything behind us is stuck down now. Okay. And very shortly, after we get the front tapes off, we'll come back and do CA between the top plank and the plywood piece. And then that piece will be permanently in place and ready for epoxy. Okay, well, let's see how we're doing on the second side. And we've had to do a little creative clamping here, diagonally down to the strong back there, holding this edge in. Alternatively, we could have wired it temporarily, although that would have been a bit of a problem. Because not a problem, but would have been a little bit more time consuming, because when we drew our pencil line and then wanted to take it off, we have to unwire it. Perfectly possible, and just untwisting the wire and pulling it off is easy enough, but the clamp was a simpler solution. We've got the front taped together here, the two sides taped together, and it's looking like it's fitting in pretty nicely. Everything looks like we'll be good. We're overlapping the planking all through. We've got a bit of a crown here where it looks like the piece here is just a little bit too far to fit down. There's a little bit of an edge here. So we're going to take off a little bit of wood here, along here, and then that'll pull in, and I think we're looking pretty good all along. This gap will pull down. So yeah, it looks good. Let's mark it and plane it to fit. We'll take off a little bit right in this, see, where's the problem area? Right from, let's say, about here to here. We'll take off a little bit in those areas. Well, maybe here, actually. Okay, so a little bit in the center here, and then mark the sides and take off along the side. Now, I can't reach into the boat here, so this is a little bit trickier, but we're reaching the end here, and so what we'll have to do is reach up inside on each of the sections. Not really a problem, but not quite as easy. And try to get a pencil line that is right along that plank, and keep the pencil straight up and down so we have an accurate line, not angling the pencil. Okay, a bit of a reach up in there, but not too bad. And moving along, we'll get this section here. Okay, so we'll get the rest of the sections, and we have a bit of a gap in the middle, but when we push these down, that tightens that gap up quite nicely. So I think we'll be fine there. And so we'll finish marking this piece, then we'll take it off and plane it a little bit along the center line here, the short part here, take it off and plane the outer edge to fit inside that plank. And then we'll see what we've got. Okay, so be back shortly, or you can watch while we keep doing this. We'll speed it up a little bit. Okay, we did this one. This one. Now up in this area here, we better keep our pencil at the same angle, perpendicular to the angle of the planking. If we go with our pencil vertical, we really won't have a very accurate line because the planking is so far from being horizontal. So here we're trying to keep the pencil perpendicular to the planking, so we get an accurate measured mark. A little hard to reach in here, but not impossible. And now to the very bow up here. Make sure your planking is, make sure your bottom pieces are meeting together and being held in place. Okay, and this is probably the trickiest part, having the pencil at the right angle. So when we start fitting, we'll be careful not to be too dependent on that pencil line. We'll keep fitting it up there to make sure that we're doing the right, getting it right. Okay, I think we're ready to pull that off and take a look at it. So we'll shape this part here first, just a little bit, because that's a little proud there. It's not quite going down. And then we'll shape the outer edge. Okay, any questions about that part? We're closing the gap, so to speak. Looking great. Okay, let's pop this off. Oh, I know, there was one other thing here at the back that I wanted to show you. And this is probably inevitable. Every boat's going to be slightly different because of all those different planks that are being put on. Very minor gaps between different planks can add up to a bit of a difference. So here at the back, we had a joint that wasn't quite perfect between this piece here and, let's get the angle right. Okay, here at the back, we had a joint that wasn't quite perfect between this piece here and this piece here. There was at least 1/8 of an inch of gap because they didn't line up right. So what we did was measure the gap at one edge where it was open, and then make a mark on the other side, and then we drew a straight line from the corner out to the mark, and then we used the block plane to plane that straight to the line, drew to the line, and then finished off with sandpaper. You can see the remnants of the line on there now, perhaps. And so before we finish up here, we'll sand that pencil line off there. But now you can see it's a very nice fit there. And so that's not to worry. That angle probably on your second side, that angle may well not come out exactly right. Maybe on your first side it wasn't right, and you had to shape it a little bit to make a perfect match between the two pieces. Okay, well, looking forward. Look at that beautiful shape there. Okay, we have this fitted and looking nice. This part will come right in here. Again, this front part has a fair amount of pressure to create the twist. So we're going to do our wire tie here with the copper wire. And it's just a very small 1/16 inch bit that we're using here. And so a hole on each side of where the station is. I can tell where the station is because of the orange tape. And then pull this out of the way, and we'll get a hole through right where we want it. Okay, for the wire, that should work. And there's the wire here. Let's get the wire through that first hole, and then we'll bend it and put it up through both these holes here. There we go. Okay, helps to be able to see. There's one. There's the other. Okay. So that was a little bit easier than the way we did it on the other side. Putting the wire through the hole in the strong back first, the strong back hull section, and then bending it and bringing it up through the holes in the station. Okay, now we're ready to remove the orange tape here. I want to check at the back of the boat, or in the middle of the boat, just behind the back. We've got a sanding block sitting on it to hold this corner in place, And that does look lined up and everything. So we should be ready to go on this. And I think we'll be pulling those, we'll pull the orange tape out one piece at a time. That seemed to work quite nicely. Probably easier than removing it all and trying to place the piece. Just get it in position and then pull the orange tape out. And let's see if we can get this down tight here. The orange tape will release, but if you get things against the orange tape exactly right the first time, the orange tape is going to be will hold better than if it's been pressed against it and then released a few times. So best to get it on the first go if it's possible. Okay, and then let's get this planking arranged up here. And we can try this. No, let's get a new piece of blue tape. Best to not reuse the tape as well. The tape won't stick as well the second time. Okay. And this time we're going to be putting a fair amount of load on this tape. So we're going to hook the tape under the edge of the boat right there. Right down the bottom edge of the boat. We'll hook the tape under the edge and then bring it up and over and then down and under the edge on the other side. That'll give us the most holding power. Okay, and stretch that tape. Any of these masking tapes are very slightly stretchable. Let's get this to be a nice joint here. So stretch it tight, and then we'll come all the way down the side and give an extra inch at the bottom and wrap that inch up underneath. Okay, and that's looking nice. Let's get this plank. I'll get this plank out a little bit. There we go. And that's an area that we'll probably want to consider some super glue on right along here, that plank. Keeping the plank out just a little proud of the plywood. And maybe another piece of tape right there, okay? One of the considerations along the line where the planks and the plywood meet is that you can sand down the planks quite a bit without it's all solid wood, so there's no real harm in sanding the planks down. Makes your boat a little lighter, in fact. But if you sand the plywood down too much, you'll sand through the top layer of veneer. And although that's not a crisis situation to be upset about, plywood's more stable and stronger if it has the two veneers intact with the core in the center. So if the plywood's standing proud and you start to sand that edge smooth, right along in here, you start to sand this edge smooth and the plywood is proud, then you may sand through the veneer on the edge of the plywood. Not a major problem, but we'd rather have the plank, the cedar plank a little proud, a little high, and then sand the cedar plank a little bit thinner because we won't sand through anything there. But basically, perfect line. If they are perfectly aligned, that's very good too. So we'll work at this area with super glue a little bit more. We'll come back to here and get the alignment just right. But for now, let's work on back, taking the orange tapes out as we go. So, here we go. Okay, this first one. That was easy. Let's get these two stuck down Make sure we're happy with this area. Looking good. And this one stuck down. Looking good. Nice. Okay. And we're back in here. And that one stuck down. Bit of a gap right along here, but actually this planking is going to pull right in against there. So we'll use the super glue technique to pull the planking right in tight there. And that'll be really nice there. That's again the reason we didn't do epoxy on these planks, so they're a little more flexible to fill any gaps. Here, in far enough, yeah, that's good. Okay. And this one. Good. Nice fit there. Okay, good. And our last one here. Okay, very nice job. Looks very good. Okay, I think that looks like a boat. Look at that nice entry there. Isn't that beautiful? That's a beautiful boat. And that'll be fun to paddle. It'll throw the water off to the side, but it's a very fine entry at the water line and should be gorgeous. Very fast and easy to paddle. Okay, so the next step is a little super glue along the line where the plywood joins the planking, and then checking over the planking that doesn't have epoxy on it yet. Make sure everything's aligned, everything's exactly the way we want it when we put the epoxy on, and then we'll get the epoxy on the planking, the last 8 pieces of planking we put on without epoxy, and right on up over the plywood. So looking great, moving very quickly. We really have a little bit less than a weekend worth of work in it to this stage. This is about 4 evenings or so, a few hours each evening. So a very fast, easy boat to build. Can't spend enough time admiring it though. It's got such pretty curves and pretty shapes, and it's going to be super light as well. This will be as light a kayak as you can build, but still plenty strong enough. Okay, thank you. Here we are back again, and look at that. We have this side completed all the way back to the back, and beautiful form, beautiful shape, looking terrific. Now I want to show you with the plywood to that top plank, it's quite a lot of CA dots because there's still a little bit of curve that we're bringing into that plywood just right there at the edge. So we've got CA dots about every 4 inches. And you can only do about 2 at a time because you have to hold them in place pretty firmly while the CA sets up and cures completely. Okay, and now I also wanted to point out that we have the planking looking pretty fair as well. Let's look at that. See, there really aren't very many ridges sticking out very much. There's a little bit of a ridge there, right here, but I think we're okay with that. That'll sand down really smoothly and be fine, and still leave plenty of thickness for the planks. And you can see the joint between the plywood and the planking is quite fair. And I want to point out too here in that joint that we've tried to keep the planking just a little bit proud, so when I run my finger across here, I feel the edge of the plank. If I run up here, I don't feel the edge of the plywood. So you want to have the planking just a little proud of the plywood, because you can sand the plank down and not get through solid wood there all the way through that plank. Whereas on the plywood, if you sand down too much, you'll go through the top layer of veneer. Not a major problem, but we prefer not to sand through the top layer of the veneer on the plywood. Nice job on all those planks, and you can see what a nice curve that is and how it fares right into the flat of the plywood beautifully, and that's really smooth. Here's our wire tie. We've gone to, there's a fair amount of force on these, so we've actually switched to a stainless steel tie on this side, and that's included in the kit rather than the copper. The copper wire is, you know, strong enough, but if you take it and twist it with pliers like we've done on this side to pull it tight, the copper wire might snap. Okay, and now we're gonna, there's that mask I'll put on in a minute. For the CA doesn't get in the air, but when you spritz it, sometimes that spritzing, the activator gets in the air. And now on the other side, I want to show you one place where we'll be working especially carefully to make sure that we've got a tight joint, and that's right in this area here. And with the, let's see, get out of the shadow here, you can see there's a bit of a gap along there right until about here, and same up to the front. But what we're going to do when we do the CA is pull that gap closed like so. You can see this, that'll pull quite nicely because again we haven't got any epoxy on these planks, and that allows them to be fairly flexible. Okay, the rest looks quite tight. Oh, now here's one other thing. Probably not necessary, entirely necessary, but I always believe in making everything as easy as possible. There is a bit of curve to these boards here, the plywood boards. Not a lot, but just you know, about 1/16 of an inch there at the edge, or maybe 1/8 of an inch, but not quite 1/8. And so if you weight them and get the plywood to bend a little bit first of its own accord before you are starting to put the CA on, then it'll be much easier to hold it in position while the CA sets and holds everything. So putting the weights on the night before is great. These weights, I just moved onto this about 15 minutes ago, so they haven't been on there very long, and so we'll see how it goes, but if you leave it overnight, that's even better. And so here we go. Another thought, and I haven't done this, but be an interesting experiment, wouldn't hurt anything, would be just to use a very, you know, a slightly damp sponge on this surface, and just make that surface a little moist. What that will do on this top surface with a very slightly damp sponge, what that'll do is expand this surface of the plywood, and that'll tend to dish it in such a way with a curve up as this plywood expands, and that might make it even easier, although you don't want to get the wood damp on the very edge where you're using the CA. It might not hold as well. And then also you have to make sure you've let that wood dry before putting the epoxy on. I'm always kind of eager to move ahead as quickly as possible and not wait for things to dry, so we're going to just do it. We're not going to try the damp sponge, but just a thought that could work well for you. Okay, so we're going to start way up at the bow here, and we'll start up here and then we'll move back as we get everything down tight. So we'll get this camera set up so you can see what we're doing, and we'll start working on it. And I'll try to stay in your view where you can see what's happening, but give me a shout if I'm working over to the side where you can't see anymore by mistake, if I move along too quickly and the camera doesn't keep up with me. Okay, so right up here we're just going to do a couple of dots. I find 2 dots works the best. It's easy to spritz them at the same time, and it's easy to hold it in place while those 2 dots set up. Okay, and the activator, you really need to hit them pretty. It's not just a teensy little bit of activator, it's, you hit them pretty solidly, and then they set off quite quickly. Now, I'd be wearing the mask now if I wasn't also trying to talk, and normally I'd be running fans, because I don't like the smell of this activator, and I doubt it's the best thing to be breathing. However, a little hard to talk and wear a mask at the same time, and the fans make a bit of noise, so it's harder to hear. Okay, bit of a gap here, right from here to here. So we're going to try to pull that together now. This is the nice thing about the activator and this 2P10. Doesn't really set up very fast until you spritz it, and then it goes off quite quickly. So you have time to position things and get them lined up the way you want them before it sets off. There, I think that'll do it. I do like wearing a glove on the left hand. I don't know if you saw that one. I do like wearing a glove on the left hand because usually I'm spritzing my fingers because I'm holding the wood in pretty close to where I'm spraying. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's see if that's set up that quick. There we go. Looks good. Okay, and moving along a little bit. Now we're getting back almost to where we've got that gap. Right in here. This is the area that we really want to make sure we take care of. Epoxy would fill that gap fine, but I think we can close that gap with pulling it together with the CA. I'm going to start here, here, and now I was just saying I like 2, but I'm going to do 3. On this one I think I'll be able to hold, well actually I'm going to do more. Because I think when I push this in, it's going to push in all along. Let's hope so. Okay, so that's, I don't usually do that many, but let's see if that's going to work for us. Yes, that looks good. Okay, a little spritz there, there, and there. Okay, and let's hope that holds it tight and closes that gap up. We'll see soon. Now, one of the effects of what we've just done by gluing the plywood to the top plank, we may find that we have then pull open a gap in here farther down, and so that's what we're going to be watching for. And guess what we'll do if we get a gap farther down? We'll put some CA in and close that up too. Okay, and again we have the plank just barely proud of the plywood. I can just feel the edge of the plank as I run my finger over it. It's very hard to look at it and see. I'm sure you can't see in the camera at all, but even just for me, it's good light and everything, and looking at it, I really can't tell which is proud until I run my finger over it. And then I can say, oh, plank's a little proud, that's what we want. Okay, now look how nice that is. That pulled that gap right together there, and in fact, these all look good too. We have few dots of CA and a little tape here, and that's holding everything in good shape. So it did not open up any seams farther down. So we're good there. I think this end seam, I'm going to try a little CA on here, just so these end pieces don't decide to pop out of place just after I put on the epoxy. There we go. Okay, you can see how easily that goes. And again, that is the reason we didn't put epoxy on these planks yet. But we will get to do that fairly soon. Now in here, I don't think we need a whole lot in here. I'll put a little dot just to be sure. Any place you're wondering, doesn't hurt to use a dot of CA. It's really the only reason for not gluing the whole boat with CA is that it's more expensive, and actually I trust epoxy more actually. But the CA is waterproof and quite strong and very durable. So CA, no reason not to use plenty of CA on this. Although you don't really want to, you don't need to do a whole long seam. Just these dots work the best, or quite adequate, the dots of CA. Amazing stuff. Especially with the activator. If you use, CA and super glue are the same thing, I should have explained that, but if you use super glue without the activator, it can take an awful long time to dry. I tried some Gorilla super glue last night, and my goodness, seemed like it was about 5 or 10 minutes before it set up and I could let go of it. It was very tedious. So the activator is really the key. Okay, now I just broke that one loose. I didn't leave it quite long enough to set up. So let's see if it's gonna, I'll add just a little bit more here. That's the trouble if you get too anxious, too eager to keep going, too excited. And don't leave it long enough, it's gonna take a little bit longer. And again, checking, making sure the plank is just a little bit proud. They're actually, it's exactly flush right here. That's okay too. But it's hard to get something perfect. So it's best if you have the plywood just a little bit lower than the planking. That way, there's a little margin for error there, a little margin for not being exactly what you think. Okay, and continuing on, now back to just 2 dots. Now that's taking a fair amount of pressure there to hold that in place just down below the plank. And sometimes you have to reach inside and push the plank out because the edge of the plywood may be catching on the plank. But so far I haven't had to do that on this side. I did have to do that on the other side several times, where I'd reach underneath, feel where that plank is, and just push it out just a little bit so it was just a bit proud. This again is just exactly flush, so that's okay. A lot of this stuff is self-leveling. That's the beauty of it. As you work, the nice straight grain in the cedar wants to stay straight. The plywood wants to stay straight and flat. It's hard to put a big kink into a piece of plywood or anything, or into these beautiful cedar planks. So that's really a big part of it, that you're not working against anything, you're just encouraging it a little bit to do what you want. Now again, we're going to do 3 here and see how that works. Okay, a little harder to do 3, but your finger, the one hand still reaches. So now I'm going to push that in a little bit. So maybe I should have just done 2, but we'll see how we're doing. We'll see how we do on this here. Okay, whoops, it's a little bit too tight and low. Always try to hold it just a little bit longer than you think is really necessary. Let's see if that's going to hold. There's a fair amount of force on this one because there's a bit of bow to the plywood, a little bit of a crown to the plywood as we get back into this area. And so I'm holding that down pretty hard. I'm leaving plenty of time for that CA to get a really good bond. Okay. Just a little bit high right in here with the plywood. I can feel that. But I think we'll be okay. I don't think we'll go through the veneer. In there, we'll see when we sand it down. And if we do, not a problem. Okay, that seems to be holding there. Let's move on back a little more. Put the weights back down on this edge. And move back in here. Now, here's where, when I push this plywood down, well, no, it went in. It almost looked like it was going to be catching on the edge of the plank and that I'd have to push the plank up inside. I was kind of hoping to show you that, but I think the concept's not too complicated, and so far I haven't had to do it here. When it's not necessary, it's not necessary. Okay, but as I say, I did have to do that on the other side for quite a few areas for a stretch of about 2 feet where I had to reach inside and push the plank down just a bit. I haven't pushed the plank up. There. Okay. Now I'm really looking forward to getting the epoxy on here, because before the epoxy goes on, you've just got a bunch of strips that are just kind of loosely held together. Once you have the epoxy on, you really have something that looks like a boat, and is going to be strong and last for years and float beautifully and be super light. This is going to be such a light boat, you won't believe it. Really easy to carry, easy to launch. And to me that means it gets lots of use, because it's not hard to get to the water. It's not heavier than you really feel like carrying. It's really easy to get to the water. Okay, now this is a case where there really isn't any CA holding this top plank to the other planks, and there is a fair amount of pressure pulling that up. So when I let go here, that top plank's going to leave a big gap below it. This has some CA in here and in here, so that may not pull apart. We'll see if it pulls apart down in here. If so, we'll use CA down there too. This is all pretty loose. We haven't got much CA in here. I'm guessing we're going to have to go CA right down to this dot, come work our way up, because you see how loose those planks are. Sort of halfway between the two hull sections. Okay, whoopsie, didn't even hold to the top plank. And then the top plank, as you saw, pulled way up. So we're going to get CA all down here, all along here. It's still not set. When it's not setting up as fast as you think it should, it's probably not got enough of the activator on it. You know, sometimes you think you sprayed it just as thoroughly as everything else, and yet it really didn't get enough, so just hit it some more. Okay, there we go. Now we got it. Now you see how it's pulling up here. We don't like that, do we? But when we glue this one to this one's going to pull up. So we're going to aim down here and do a whole string of them. So I'm glad to get to see this, and because this is something we frequently have to do. Okay, so I'm just pushing one plank in so I can get CA down between them. Okay, and then now we want to pull it all together tight so it's all just the way we want it. And then when we have a nice smooth curve there, all the planks lined up, let's hit it. Not quite. Fair amount of pressure on here. Not really hard to hold, but I'm pushing fairly hard to keep that together while that sets up. Oh, it still wants to pull apart right that joint. Probably didn't get quite enough in there. Okay, and then let's spritz that and we'll push that right together. Okay, that should do it. And we're almost back to our joint with the back piece of plywood right back here behind the weights, right where that sanding block is. So we've almost got this side done. And you can see it's looking pretty darn good up there, all along there. All the way along, right up to the bow. So, nice job. And now let's see what we're doing here, see if we've got this taken care of here. Okay, let's try it. Yeah, that looks good. Now this is pulling out just a little bit here. Let's go in just a little bit with a dot of CA. Where's it worst? Right in here, I think would be perfect. Okay, again, that gap would be okay. It's not much of a gap, but let's get it. So we think it's just right. Okay, so 3 dots along there, and we'll see how that handles things. Some parts of the boat definitely take more CA than others because the wood's under more, there's more stress in the wood, the way the boat's shape is pulling it, the wood apart or the planks apart. Other parts of the boat, the wood lays in quite easily and really doesn't have any tendency to pull apart. So some places you'll be using a lot more CA than other places, of course. Okay, and that's what I guessed. Now we got a little separation right above that plank. So again, we'll close up these gaps with the CA and get everything tight. Here and here. And I'm doing a little more frequent gaps here because it is tending to want to pull apart. Okay, that's looking good there. Let's hit that and see what we've got. I've got my hand in the way, I can't see the last one. Uh-oh, don't put your thumb in it. Oh, and that's a big warning. Don't glue your finger to the boat. It's pretty easy to see where the CA is, but if you put your finger right in the CA and hold it, you're going to get glued right onto your boat, and it's not going to be fun taking your finger off. So also with your glove, if you glue your glove on, I think what I just did, well, I glued the tip of my glove on, and now the tip of the glove is no longer on the glove, it's on the boat. And epoxy will not stick to the glove material. So wherever you glue a tip of, right here, I think I have a little tip of glove here. Wherever you glue a bit of glove on, make sure you scrape it off with a knife blade or chisel or something, or sand it off sometime. Okay, let's see what we've got now. Okay, now that looks nice. Let me give you a lower angle on that so you can see along the curve. You can probably see better than I can at this angle. Okay, so you see how that all pulled in, and we have there's no real gaps there now, and there's a smooth curve. And there's, you know, you feel a little roughness from edge to edge, but that'll all sand out really easily without making the planks too thin or anything. So we've got that whole area taken care of now. Okay, and so I'm just going to finish up. I think you've seen the technique here pretty thoroughly. Because this showed a number of different techniques. First gluing the plywood to the top plank, and here's a bit of a gap there. I'll pull that in too. So a little dot right here, and then probably we'll have it. So I think you've seen the technique pretty thoroughly, and we only have a little bit left to go here. So I'll finish that up, and then we'll be back shortly when we finish this. Next step, we'll be going along the center line and getting those planks tight along the center line, the 2 plywood pieces tight along the center line. So that'll be fun to see that. So I'll show you a bit of that process too. Basically just doing the same thing we've been doing all along with the CA, pulling the gaps together and securing them so they're ready for epoxy. Okay, and there, see how easy that was to take care of that little gap there. Okay, a little bit more in here, and then we'll be finished. Now, the last step with the CA is down the center. Now this is good. There's one place here where these pieces aren't going to come together because that strong back is holding them apart. And not a problem, but I'm going to just skip this right here and get it together from about here forwards and from about here back. Later on we'll leave that gap and we won't get epoxy in there. Later on, when we pull the strong back out, that'll let that gap close up and we'll take care of it then. So again, just part of the process is making things work for yourself. If it's easier to close that gap later on, that's great. Do it later, after the strong back's out of the way. Okay, and tape will be good to make the CA, give the CA a chance to hold things without having to hold it physically. Okay, so a few dots there. Spritz that. Now with the tape on there, I don't really have to hold it. That's nice. We'll do the same with the tape back here. Here it's nice if you get both sides, level, so one's not higher than the other or something. Just a nice meeting. Again though, if they're not level, they'll sand off later and you can make them level by sanding. The great breakthrough in boat building that made boat building really accessible to everyone was the development of epoxy, which is the first glue that man ever developed that actually is a gap filling glue. Before epoxy, all your joints had to be perfectly tight, because all the glues as they set shrunk very slightly. If you had a 1/16 of an inch gap, the glue would shrink and crack and your pieces of wood would not be glued together. But with epoxy, it's a gap filling compound. It doesn't shrink when it sets up. You can have 1/4 inch gap, and if it's filled with epoxy, it'll be strong and last forever. So although one might regret the loss of fine craftsmanship that was implicit in boat building when glues were not gap filling, it certainly makes it easier with epoxy. However, as you work along here, you can look at it both ways. If you actually have gaps that aren't going to close up, not to worry about it because the epoxy will take care of it. But if you have a perfect fit, like these are coming together very nicely, if you have a perfect fit, that can be quite pleasing and something to feel good about. You could have been a classic boat builder before the age of epoxy. Okay. Depending on how you hit it with the spritzer, sometimes it sets off almost instantly, it seems, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times as long. So you just have to be a little bit flexible and hold it for long enough. Okay, I'm going to spritz that and then hold with 2 hands. Okay, I think you've seen enough to get the idea. We'll work on back all the way along the center line, and then we'll have this all glued together, and we'll be ready for epoxy. And we'll be back in touch with you when we get to the epoxy. Oops, a little bit longer. Just one note on the super glue on the plywood. You're doing it right on the edge grain of the plywood. That's fine, but some of the super glue is going to soak into the edge grain because it's fairly liquid. And so it does take a little bit more glue than on the edge of a plank because you're going to lose some of the super glue soaking in. But this is coming together very tight, very nicely, and looking really good. Okay, so we'll work on back along there, and then we'll get some epoxy on there, and we're going to have a beautiful boat here. Look at that shape. Isn't that nice? As we pull back here, you can see the shape of the boat, the shape of the bow, that graceful entry, and a little flared out to shed the waters so you don't get too wet when you're paddling. And that narrow beam, that's going to be very fast and fun to paddle, and super light. You're going to love it. Okay, going great. We'll catch up with you when we get back to the epoxy. Right now I'm going to turn the fans back on and put on my mask. Okay, talk to you in a minute. Okay, look at that. We've got it. From the bow all the way back. And up here in the front, we've got our dots about 4 inches apart. Here a little tighter, 3 inches apart. There was a little more pressure there. We felt we needed a little more bonding. Got some weights there, but the dots still keep going. Mostly 3 inches apart. There's one that's 2 inches apart, and 3 and 4 inches apart. Some of that spacing is just random. Some is because we didn't measure it or anything. We were just putting dots on. And some of the spacing is because there was more pressure and we wanted more holding power. And then at the back where the panels join, you can see we've got dots on the corner and dots in the middle where the two panels join, and dots at the four-way corner there and across. So looking very tight. This part down here, we don't have any dots on there. I might put a dot right here. There's a little right there. It's a little. This piece is a little bit proud of this piece, but where it's lined up perfectly, I'm not even going to touch it. We'll just use epoxy. Now, down the center line, there'll be an extra piece of fiberglass tape over that seam down the center line and running all the way back. But on the outside, there won't be any tape crosswise. We don't want a lump to crosswise to interrupt the water flow. So where these two panels meet, there'll be an inside joining piece that overlaps the two panels. It'll run about like this on the inside, and again on the other side about like that, and overlapping and glued on with epoxy. Now, one thought is when we're coating this entire surface with epoxy, if we coat this joint, this looks pretty tight. Actually, I don't think too much epoxy will get through. But even still, especially if the joint is a little bit more open here, if we coat that joint and epoxy just has a little build on the backside, then we won't be able to glue our flat pieces on so easily. We'd have to sand a little bit to get those pieces to fit up tight. So I think if I remember when we're doing it, I'll just avoid these two seams here. Maybe I'll put some tape over those now. We'll put a little blue tape over those, and that'll remind me not to coat those with epoxy. And so we'll put the inside, once everything's coated and solid, we'll proper off the strong back, and we'll put our inside gussets on there before coating the outside, and then we'll come back and coat the outside. That way we know we'll have a flat surface on the inside there with no epoxy drips that we have to sand. So let's get some tape on there, and we'll be ready for epoxy here real soon. Okay, it's just a reminder not to put epoxy where it'll go down through, potentially down through that crack. Okay, that's good. There we go. We can go right up to the tape on each side. We don't want to go over the tape. If you get up on the tape edges, over the edge of the tape, it's hard to pull the tape off without having to dig the pieces of tape, little pieces of tape that get stuck in the epoxy. You have to dig them out of the epoxy. So we'll stop the epoxy back 1/4 of an inch away from that tape. That'll be fine. Okay. We will be back with epoxy here in just a minute. See you soon. Pretty exciting. And it's gone very fast. This is a fast boat to build. And sure is a beautiful shape. Okay, we'll be back soon. We're back. Getting ready for the epoxy. That's exciting. And I've just been going around the boat patting it, you might say. I want to make sure that there's no place where the planks aren't lined up well enough. In fact, I think this isn't too bad, but I think we'll use a little CA right there. So we found a place right off. That's good. That's what we're looking for. We assumed there'd be a few places that we could get a little tighter. So it's where are we? Right in here, I think. Yeah. Where there's just a bit more of a lip here. We want this plank, the uncoated one, to be in just a bit farther and this one to be out just a little farther. So we'll just align those a little bit like that. Would have been okay. Wouldn't have been a disaster. But it'll be even better this way. Okay, and our spritzer. Now I probably couldn't have seen that. I have pretty good eyesight still, but I probably couldn't have seen that, but I could feel it quite easily. As soon as I ran my fingers over it, it was like, oh, it's a bit uneven. So that's the trick, to feel it. The fingers can feel differences of 1/1000th of an inch. Amazing ability to distinguish very small irregularities with our fingertips. So use your fingertips to check and see how everything's lining up. Okay, looks like that's holding. Might actually, yeah, I'm going to ease these out a little bit too. It's not too bad here. I could leave this, but what the heck? It's easy to adjust. Okay. Let's hit that. All the CA will blend right in with the epoxy, so we're not going to see it when we coat the boat with the epoxy. Okay, good. Okay, so really it is petting the boat. Boat likes to be petted at this stage. I'll set those up there. Okay, looking good. It's going to be okay. That's looking good. No problems. Good light is also important. At this stage, we're doing a visual inspection. Oops, can't see where I'm petting, can you? Oh, no, I don't like that. So, well, let's see if we can figure that one out. No. Yeah, it's okay. There's just a bit of a misalignment there, but we have CA on it, so we'll see if that CA is set up and holding it, or if it's just, but we'll be okay even if we just leave it. It's right in here. Yeah, that's set up. We'll just leave that. That'll be fine. Okay, this gap along here that where the plywood and the planking weren't quite together, that pulled together really nicely. Okay, looking good all along here. Now the bow, there's always a question at the bow, because this is where the planks are actually having to do a fair amount of twist. I think we'll just leave those. There's a little bit of overlap. I think we'll just leave those and we'll sand that smooth later on. And going back along this side, remember to keep feeling, don't miss any place. Bit of a gap in here. I think we'll leave that though for the epoxy to fill in. I think that'll be fine. Bit of misalignment there, but not too bad. Okay, nice. All this is looking good. Let's tighten this up right here. See how that's, the epoxy would fill that, but let's get some CA in there to pull it together. We'll have to attach this one too. Okay, so this is an important step. Don't rush into your epoxy without doing this step carefully. Okay, so it's right here. And you can see we have CA just above that place. We just didn't do it all the way down, which is a bit of an oversight, it looks like. Okay, there, that's looking really nice. It actually was pretty well lined up. In fact, it wasn't until I pushed on it slightly that I realized there was a little more play than I wanted in case it got out of alignment just as I put the epoxy on, or by brushing or something. So that'll stabilize it right there with the CA. Oops, a little bit longer. Not a lot of action happening right now, sorry about that. No, it still wasn't enough. Okay, let's get a little bit, not all that much force in here, so I'm surprised that didn't hold, but now we'll get it. Good blast of CA there, of the accelerator there. And there you go. That looks okay there. Though we could push that plank out a little bit and see if we like that better. No. No, it seems to be happy there. Okay. Now I did notice one area a little bit farther back here that I definitely wanted to take care of. Let's see if we can find that. Here it is, right here. Almost went past it. See, this plank is, I don't know if you can see that. It's hard to, it's really hard visually to see it at all. Let me push on it while the camera's at the right angle. Okay, see that plank is moving in and out just a little bit. And it's got a bit of a gap underneath it. So let's tighten that up there with the CA. And I'll set you back over here so you can see what we're doing. And it's right between the epoxied planks and the plank immediately above that. So let's see, right in here. And the question is whether we're going to create a gap above it. I suspect we will. So let's take care of all these planks all at once. Okay. We'll spritz that and push it in together so it is tight. So you can see, if you just look at the boat without a real detailed inspection, you're going to miss a few places like this. No matter how careful you've been earlier, you'll miss a few places like this. So this is an important step, this final inspection, just before putting the epoxy on. In fact, I'd do this inspection just before you're ready to mix the epoxy. If you did it and then let the boat sit for 2 days before you put your epoxy on, there might be places where some CA lets go or something changes. Let's see, that's still not quite getting it. Where something else changes and you might not catch it again. So this is the inspection you want to do right before you're mixing epoxy. Okay, let's see if that, no, it still doesn't have it. There's not a whole lot of force here, so the expectation would be that it wasn't going to take very long, but you'll find that the depending on how the activator, how much of the activator is in contact with the CA, that really affects the drying time, the setting time. Okay, I think we have it now. There we go, looks good. That'll hold. Now let's just finish up a little bit here. Just a little, I mean, this would be fine with the epoxy, but it'll be even better if we just pull that in just a teensy bit. So let's do it. It's easy to do. Right in here. This is just alignment, it's not so much a gap, it's just the alignment is off a little bit. This plank in the middle here was just a little bit higher than the one underneath it. Not a whole lot of force on this one, so shouldn't take very long to set up there. And we'll keep going all the way back, but boy, from what I can see, it looking pretty good. Here's one more place. Okay, that seems to be holding there. Very good. Another second. Just a little bit more. Okay. I'm moving back. How are we doing in here? This looks pretty darn good, actually. Any place we want to firm up in here? We could just push this in a bit here. Yeah, this bottom plank, we've got these attached pretty nicely up through here, but this bottom plank isn't really attached, sort of attached here. I wonder if that's holding. But right in here, we could push that in just a bit. It'd be a little nicer. Let's hit it. Okay. It's easier if you push it in just a little bit too far so you can get the CA into the gap from above. It's a little hard if the overlap is the other way. It's a little hard to get the CA to wick itself up. Gravity helps a lot with that sort of thing. And here we are, right at the back of the boat. So I think we've gone all the way around and checked everywhere, both by look and by feel. And I think we're ready for epoxy. Probably good to brush off. See, there's some shavings right in there. Right, good to make sure you don't have a whole lot of extra shavings sitting on your boat, because those would get epoxied in and then need sanding out. So and brush or blow off anything that's sitting on the boat. Mostly we look like we're pretty clean though, so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, and that one's good. Okay, and here we're going to be using our wider brush because we're covering a bigger surface area. This is an 1.5 inch chip brush. These are just cheap brushes, 50 cents or $1. And good for epoxy. Okay, a little more dust on it here. Let's blow that off. Now that one, use the brush on it so you don't catch the bristle on wood grain. Now we're not going to be coating the part of the boat that we've already coated. We're just doing the top part. Later on, we'll go back and pull tape off and everything and get everything coated. But for now, we want to stabilize everything that so far hasn't been coated. Okay, so here we are, mixing epoxy. Whoa! Sorry, I lost you there. Okay, and let's see what we'll be doing. Let's do, I think now that you're more experienced, you can probably do 8 marks and get them on quickly enough. The advantage of doing 4 marks instead of 8 is that it's not going to start to set up while you're putting it on. But this is partly a temperature related decision here. How much epoxy you want to mix up at one time. There we go. Now I can talk to you. Partly a temperature related question. How much epoxy you want to mix up at one time. If it's really warm, stick with the 4 marks because it's going to be setting off really fast. Part of it is the room temperature that you're working at, the temperature of the material, the boat that you're putting it onto, and part of it is the temperature of the resin before you even start to work with it. If the resin's really warm, that's good in its way. It makes it less viscous, more runny, so it'll wick in better. I probably wouldn't be doing this if it was 50 degrees in here. It's probably about, it feels pretty warm to me, although I've got a few sweaters on. I would say it's probably about 60, 63 or so in here. And that'll mean the epoxy takes quite a bit longer to set up, but by morning it should be set up hard, no problem with that. And it being a little bit cooler and setting slower, it'll have more time to wick in even though it's a little bit thicker, so you have sort of a balance, a trade-off. But if it's under 50 or around 50, under 60, I probably wouldn't do this because I want the resin to be pretty runny. There would be ways to work on it if it was colder. For instance, heating up your resin first, putting on a little space heater, one of the radiator type heaters. They're heated with inner oil and stuff through the radiator type fins. That would be fine. That would help a lot. That would mean your resin was runny enough to get into the cracks in the boat easily. But ideally, it wouldn't be as cold as 50 degrees. It'd be 60 to 70. 70 I think would be my ideal, but I don't think I'll have any trouble tonight with it. And I'm eager to get on with the project. Okay, so there's 4 resin. Let's get the camera so you can see what we're doing. So we have 4 resin so far. Let's go for a big 8. Okay. There's 8. And then 8 small marks of hardener. And that'll give us our 5 parts of resin. So to 1 part of hardener, 5 to 1. Okay, there's 8 marks of small marks of hardener. Okay, 5 in the bottom and then 3 above. And make sure you don't have air bubbles in your syringe, because that would throw your measurements way off. Pull the syringe back a little bit, the plunger back, so it doesn't get stuck at the bottom. Get this mixed up. The key now is to make sure it's mixed thoroughly. So kind of my rule is you mix until you think it's mixed really thoroughly, and then you mix for another minute before you start working with it. Again though, if you mixed up 8 and you're working in Florida in the middle of the summer on a hot day, you better be really fast with this because it's already starting to set off on you. So you might only have 5 minutes if you mix up 8 to get it on the boat before it's a hard mass in your container and smoke is coming off of it and it's too hot to touch. But tonight, that's something a little bit over 60, between 60 and 70. I'm not really too worried about it setting off too fast. There should be plenty of time. So a little more relaxed depending on the temperature. Okay, make sure you mix along the side. Really, seriously, any resin that hasn't come in contact with hardener is never going to get hard. A year from now, it'll still be sticky. So make sure you've mixed very thoroughly. Okay, that should do it. Okay, and a good basic rule is to put your lids back on right after you use them, in case the containers get knocked over. They might still spill a little bit, they're not on tight, but they won't, all the material won't spill out. Okay, and look, we're started. Here we are, just brushing it right on, and this is just, you're laying it on thick. Watch out for the edges of your tape. It's easier if you don't go over the edges of your tape. But overall, the concept is get a lot of resin on there, because where the cracks are, it's going to wick through, and you need a lot of resin to reach all the way through. So some strokes lined up with the grooves, the cracks, some strokes across to force resin into those cracks. Okay, and especially good along the joint between the plywood and the cedar. And you also really focus on the butt joints in the planking. If some of those are a little bit more open, just keep hitting them until the epoxy fills those in. Okay. This is looking great. Now, a bit of a question whether you want to do all the plywood. My inclination is not. There's really no need to do the plywood at this point. If you do it, if you cover the whole plywood with epoxy, you're going to need to make sure you've wiped off any possibility of amine blush. That's easy, it comes off with water. But it's easier. The best epoxy bonds well to epoxy, but the best bond is epoxy to bare wood. So we're going to be putting a very light fiberglass cloth over the entire structure, and when we put that fiberglass cloth on would be the best time to coat the plywood, instead of coating it now and then having to deal with the amine blush. Make sure you get the amine blush off. So let's not coat all the plywood. You can go up as far as you need to make sure that crack. In fact, go up above the crack enough, because some of this epoxy up in this area is going to slide down and get into that crack, which is what we want. Okay, and this isn't just once hit it and then you're finished. This is go back over it, because wherever there's a bigger crack, like here, right at this butt joint, now the epoxy is all soaked in. Back here, it looks like it's all soaked in. So this isn't just a one step. This is keep hitting it until you know it's all filled in, and keep brushing it. Just that little bit of, as your brush goes over it, the planks may have just a little bit of in and out movement. You don't want much, but just that little bit of movement will help move the epoxy through between the planks, especially where they're tight. Okay. Looking good. Up here where the wire is, I would not coat your wire. You don't want to glue the wire in. And where the pins are, just go right up around the base. They'll come out still fine. So just don't dislodge them, but go right up around the pins. That would be, sorry you're not watching. Here, please keep watching. Okay. I think you can see now better. We're just coming up here to the bow, getting up to the front, and we've almost used up our 8. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of how far you can get with 8 marks. We've done about 4.5 feet with 8 marks, and I think we're just, see if we have enough. I don't know if we'll have enough for the bow or not. We might just get up to the bow here. Nope, time for more. Okay, it's looking splendid. Really nice. Okay, good. Now, this obviously isn't the last coat, or the final finish. This will get sanded, and then we'll put a very thin, very light fiberglass cloth over it all. And so there's a lot more. So if you miss a place or something at this stage, it's not going to be an issue. Okay, so you can see we've come from the bow up right at the front, back to about 4.5 feet back right there. And so we'll mix up another 8. 8 felt just right, very comfortable amount. So we'll mix up another 8 and get that on, and we'll go ahead and do it and see you later. Okay, going great. Bye now. Okay, here we are. The new epoxy is set up, and we've got what looks like a boat. And everything looking great. Now I think we're ready to take out the pins and then take off the tape. We should be able to undo our ties here, and that will be good. The next, what we're moving towards, is flipping the boat over and coating the inside with epoxy, and then we'll flip it back to this side and coat where the tape was. And oh, One important point, do not remove your bow tape up here. That's all that's holding the bow together, remember? There's nothing holding these planks together except the tape. So make sure that tape is still holding on there. Press it on tight. And don't take that off. We'll fill inside the bow with epoxy and an epoxy fillet, a thickened epoxy fillet in there. So that'll be super strong. And then we'll come back on the outside and take that tape off. But right now, there's nothing holding those planks together up there. But these other pieces of tape all along the hull, they're ready to come off because those planks are held on each side. They're not really, well, you can see even where the tape was, the epoxy's wicked right through along there in some cases. So there's something holding those planks together a little bit in some places. But really what's holding them together is the epoxy on either side. So that tape can come off. You can see this place here, we'd added a squeeze clamp because this tape wasn't wanting to hold on there. So we wrapped the tape around the bottom, put a squeeze clamp on to hold it. So creative taping systems are good. And we can take these off. Now if you haven't painted over the edge of your tapes with epoxy, they're going to come off pretty nicely and easily. If you've got epoxy up over the edge, you may find some place where you get some blue tape stuck in the epoxy. That's actually one of the reasons I like the blue tape, because it's pretty visible. If you have a little bit of the blue still in the epoxy, you can see it, and then you can work it out. Something sharp like, a chisel can get under the tape if there's just a little corner stuck in the epoxy and lift it off. You don't want to hurt the wood, but something sharp or a knife blade. And we're taking these top ones off. That's exciting. This is all epoxied along the center line now. You can see all the way down the boat on the center line. It's all epoxied together. And you can see what a thick coat maybe we've put on. Some of this will be sanded off when we're fairing the boat, but we wanted a thick coat, so we fill in all the gaps between the planks. What we're really concerned with is the epoxy that went through between the planks, much more so than the epoxy on the surface, because we'll be sanding the surface. I suppose you could leave it just like this with the sort of ribbed look on the outside, and you'd probably be fine. It'd be probably almost as fast, but we'll actually be sanding it quite smooth. Okay, then on the pins, I think we're ready for getting some pins out. It's a little hard to see those pins. Let's get in there a little closer and see if we can see where they are even. There they are, right in there. Okay, see those pins there? Okay, now to get the pins out, you see some of these pins are pretty mangled and bent by now. Some of them got bent putting them in, some got bent afterwards. To get the pins out, the trick is to grab them tight and then twist. Once they've twisted, that breaks the epoxy bond and they'll come out quite easily. Just pulling them straight out is a lot harder and potentially might even damage the wood. But twist them first, break the epoxy bond. You'll find they're not really that hard to get out, but the twisting is the key. Okay, you can see those holes are almost invisible, and those holes will be filled with epoxy as we recoat this. Okay, and we shouldn't need this wire anymore, so let's take that off. And we started with a copper wire, but this stainless steel wire turned out to be much better. Okay, rather than pull the gnarled twisty part through and making the hole in the plywood bigger, we're going to clip that off there, and the same on this side, and then that'll pull out easily from the inside. If I can get my hand on it right. Yeah, let's try the pliers, see if that's easier. There we go, it's one side out, and that's the other side out. Okay, whoops, you couldn't really see any of that, could you? Anyway, what we were talking about was the wire that was here. We can show you on the other side so you can see it. We've got wires on both sides. Where's that wire? Okay, there we go. So we were just talking about untwisting the wire and then clipping it off. So we're not pulling all the twisted part through, and then reaching inside and finding it and pulling it out, although it's a little hard to find it inside there. Let's push that through a little bit. Now we should be able to find it easier. Yeah, here it is. Okay, and then we can grab it tight enough. Oh, I need the pliers. Okay, and that one's gone. Okay, so look at that. Again, the problem at this stage, the thing that'll slow you down the most is spending too much time just admiring what you've done. So keep moving ahead. Okay, we'll get this tape off here. I don't know if you can see this one coming off here. Okay, remember, leave your bow tape. You're pulling off tape right and left, and it's exciting, but don't, whoopsie, leave your bow tape. Don't start pulling off your bow tape. That would be a bad mistake. Okay, don't touch that tape up there. Here's the tape. This is what we were talking about. You see here, we got over the blue a little bit right there, and we want to get all that blue out from under the epoxy. Oops, try from the bottom. So if you get it, if it's tearing and leaving blue from pulling it from the top, try pulling it from the bottom. Here's just a little fleck of blue there that we got out. So the blue's going to show, so don't think, oh, I'll just leave it and epoxy over it or something. The blue will show, and might be an irritation to you. So make sure you get all the blue off. There we go. Okay, it's really pretty easy. And the reason I like this blue tape, this is a blue 3M masking tape, painter's masking tape. The reason I like this blue tape is that it sticks quite well, but it really doesn't disturb the wood grain when you pull it off. You can see there's a little bit of wood stuck on there, just a very thin sort of coloration of wood really stuck to the tape. But it really hasn't damaged the wood at all. So that's why we like this. It sticks well, but it also releases well. Oh, a couple more pins. Try not to miss any of your pins. So we'll go back on those. And I didn't use very many pins. I just found on both sides, right in this front bow area, as we came into this twist, I found that the pins were helpful. We could have used more. You could pin every plank to every station if you were inclined. And some builders would possibly do that, and that's perfectly fine. To me, it's, my perception is that it's really not necessary, and it does take a lot more time. So my inclination is just to pin it in those few places. Really, the only places I found were, let's zoom back so you can see better where we're working. The only places I found were just right back from the bow here. The only places I found were up here at the bow from station 1, this 2, station 3 back here. I had one pin in station 3 and several in station 2. About 2 on this side and 3 on the other side, right at this turn. And that's where these planks are coming forwards, still fairly vertical from the middle of the boat, and then they're being asked to roll inwards. And I found the pins were helpful there. Okay, super, You could have probably done the whole thing and gotten it flat with super glue and tape, but the pins work awfully nicely, and you can see you never see those holes. And they will be filled with epoxy with later coatings. So not use as many pins as you want, but they do slow you down a little bit if you don't need them. Okay. So I think that's most of what we have to go over tonight. We'll get the rest of the tape off, and we might even roll her over tonight. That'd be fun. And take a look at it. Remember, we still don't have the two plywood panels joining together. They're at the back. We still have just the tape on them. We'll leave that tape on the plywood panels as well. There, you can see it right there, joining the front panels to the back panels. We'll leave that tape in place until we get the gussets on the inside, joining those panels, overlapping those panels by about 1.5 inches on each side to make that a strong joint. And then we'll come back on the outside and take that tape off. So the tapes that you're leaving are, well, 3 places. The bow tapes, those tapes stay in place. The middle tape where the two front and back plywood sections are joined. And the stern tapes right back in here. Remember, there's nothing holding the back end of the boat together here. If you pull that tape off, the planks will spring apart. So don't take those tapes off either until we do the same as on the bow. We'll add a fillet on the inside there, and that'll make that super strong. Okay, but all these tapes along the side, they're ready to come off, and that's what I'll be working on now. Look at that beautiful boat. Very slender and elegant, and that's going to be fun. Can't wait to paddle it. Okay, thank you. Now we're ready to roll the boat. This is an exciting moment. We get to see what it looks like when it's right way up. And this will be a little bit easier than when we were ready to roll the 24-foot laminated cedar veneer sailboat that I built. For that project, again, we built it upside down like this and then rolled it over. For that project, we had lots of mattresses and a whole bunch of friends, and so that was very exciting, rolling that over. But it went really well too. Cedar boats are basically much lighter than fiberglass, and so even rolling a big cruising boat, 24-foot cruising boat like that over was not as hard as we anticipated. It went really well. So here we're going to roll the kayak. We have a double comforter, double layers of a comforter over here to roll it onto, so it will be a soft landing. And let's do it. Oh, there it goes. Oh, that's light. Nah, just kidding. Doesn't weigh anything. Very easy to roll. Okay, and there she is. Look at that. Wow, beautiful. Okay, next step is pull the runners out. Let's see if, can you still see it? Yeah, there you can see it. Let's get back into, right into view. Oh, and there's our mascot, Maggie. Maggie, come on, come on. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, smile, smile, smile. I can't catch, stand still. I can't see you. Here you go. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah. Yeah, hi there. Yeah, hi. Good girl. Yeah. Okay, so that's our Tippecanoe mascot. Okay, now here's the boat. Let's pull back a little bit so you can see a little bit more of it. And that looks good. Okay, now we'll pull out the long runners. This actually would be easier if you had a couple of people to work on it, but well, it's easy with one too. Let's see how we get this out. Okay. We're not taking these hull sections out yet, just the runners. There we go. Okay. That's fine. Okay. The trick is to kind of get it all up at once. That's why, there we go. 2 people would be easier on that, but in fact, if you're going to build 3 more kayaks with the same strong back, you want to be careful of these, because this material is not very strong. It's good for what we use it for, but it's not very strong. So you want to handle these long pieces especially carefully, because it's pretty easy to break that stuff. Okay, and let's take a look inside here. Okay, you can't really see much from where you are. Okay, and here we are. I'll try to stay out of the light and give you a better view here. Okay, and look at that, isn't that nice? Wow, really good. Okay, and you see how the sides just curve right down into the bottom and make a real smooth transition into that bottom, those bottom pieces. Okay, so that's great, and yeah, it looks great. Now, our next step, and you can see how the epoxy comes through between the planks. Sometimes a little bit more than we want, but most places it just comes right through perfectly. And see right there, we got a few drips on the inside, but not enough to add any significant weight or anything. And then the next step will be to coat the inside. And we'll leave these whole sections in place until we have the whole inside coated right up close to either the hull sections on either side, and let that set up. And then after that is set up, we'll pull out the hull sections, and then we'll coat where the hull sections were, and we'll have the inside entirely coated. The only part of the inside that we won't be coating is right in the middle section, where you'll want to be able to stand in the boat as you get on board, and forwards a little bit where your legs will go, because that area in the bottom section in the middle here, that area will be laying down carbon fiber and Kevlar to stiffen the bottom there, to take your weight as you step in, and also to take the weight of the seat there. So those areas we won't coat, because we get better adhesion with epoxy when we're going with epoxy right onto bare wood. It's okay to go on epoxy onto epoxy, but the adhesion is better when it's epoxy onto bare wood. That's the best, because the epoxy sinks into the wood grain and is part of the wood. You can't separate the two ever. Okay, well, that looks great. Couldn't be prettier. Okay, nice job. We are really moving along here. And here we have the boat right side up and looking great. I really like the way the curved side fares right into the flat plywood on the bottom. Very smooth, very graceful. Now, this next step, you can choose whether to do it or not, but I think it's fairly important, and I would recommend it. If your epoxy went off very quickly and it was hot and dry, you may not need to do this. You can decide. If it was slightly moist or high humidity or cooler, you may have developed the amine blush on the epoxy surface. That's just a water-soluble coating that just comes out of the epoxy in certain conditions, temperature and humidity. So, but the problem with it is it's not difficult to deal with, but the problem with the amine blush is that the next coat of epoxy won't stick very well if you don't wipe off the amine blush. Now, there are a couple of approaches. You can wipe it off with water. However, if we do the water technique on the inside, we'll saturate all the wood. We'll get all the wood really wet. So, I'd rather use acetone on the inside. That deals with that does a really good job with amine blush, and that really won't saturate the wood. That'll evaporate almost instantly out of the wood, off the wood. So we're going to do that on the inside where there's a lot of bare wood because we haven't recoated. We want to get the amine blush off the inside, if there is any, before we start recoating, because otherwise where we're going over areas of epoxy, the new coat might not stick as well. Another approach would be to sand the inside at this point, but I prefer just to leave the inside, you know, with its slightly ribbed surface, and then we'll be sanding the outside smooth, or you could leave the outside slightly ribbed too, but I think most of us will probably want to sand the outside and then just leave the inside with the ribbing in place. So on the outside you have more options. Since the entire surface will be coated, you could use a water wipe, clean off the amine blush with warm water and a rag or paper towel, or you could use acetone. Yes, hi, yeah, I think that's great, yeah, you ready for this? Okay, now this is the one step that I'm not going to tell you it's fun. I really don't like acetone very much. If you have a vinyl glove on your hand, you'll be wiping things down, and in about 2.5 minutes you'll realize that the glove no longer has any fingertips, that all the fingertips on the glove have melted off. You'll get farther if you have 2 layers of gloves or 3 layers of gloves, but they still won't last very long. So a real heavy duty industrial glove is about the only thing that can take the acetone without dissolving. But if you're using the latex gloves or the vinyl gloves, just anticipate going through several of them and watch the tips of the fingers, and when they start to dissolve, switch to a new pair of gloves. Okay, so paper towels and acetone. Now if you wanted to leave your boat for longer, you don't want to get the wood really saturated with water because it'll lift the grain. The grain's pretty... I really don't think I'd use water on the inside. I think I would prefer to just not do anything on the inside than to use water. And then on the outside we have the options. I'll do it where you can see. So it's real quick. You're not really doing much. It's not hard to wipe off. It wipes off instantly. And you could use a rag. That might be even better because paper towel's disintegrating a little bit. Not from the acetone, but just from the roughness of the surface that I'm wiping. But a paper towel's adequate. Now as we do this, you do want to use plenty of acetone because you might be, you know, there's some epoxy down slightly below the surface in the grooves, and so to get that off, any amine blush off of that epoxy, you need to use a fair amount of acetone. This is smelly stuff, so in just a minute after I stop talking, I'm going to turn on the fans and put a mask on. Because you really don't want to get high on this stuff. You want to stay healthy so you can enjoy paddling your kayak. And you can see it dries almost instantly. So this whole section that I started with is essentially dry now. Okay, but if your paper towel is falling apart and leaving too many little pieces of paper towel inside, use a rag instead. Either one is okay, but you just don't. If it's falling apart and you're going to have to clean out all those pieces of little bits and pieces of paper towel, that's going to be one extra step for you. Oh, one other thing that I need to mention here is if you see any places where you had a piece of blue tape that you were using to hold a joint or something, and then you put on the next plank and the blue tape got captured between 2 planks. If you have any place like that, you're going to have to dig out that blue tape because it'll be a weak spot in your boat. You want epoxy there, not blue tape that epoxy doesn't really stick to very well. So you'd have to use a mat knife or something and just keep working at it between the planks until you can pull that little bit of blue tape out. But don't leave it in there and just think that that's okay, because that's really not a good plan. And you know, try not to split the planks or pry on them, but if you scrape up the edges of the two planks where they meet just a little bit and getting the blue tape out, that won't do any harm. That'll be filled in with epoxy. Okay, time for the fans and for a mask for me, so I can live to a healthy old age. Okay, we'll see you when we get this done. It's only a few minutes to do it.